PSU I don't remember a whole lot of because that came out during my main stint Final Fantasy 11, which I played for 10 years. During Golden Era of Final Fantasy 11, I had to specify that because what Final Fantasy 11 is now is completely different than what it was during the Golden Era. Two entirely different games, entirely different, philosophies and ideologies, and you know what I'm saying. But yeah, so I always have to specify Golden Era. If you know, you know. And 11's kind of a shell of itself. Yeah, not kinda. It is a shell of itself. Like a completely a shell of itself. The game that the Final Fantasy 11 that exists now is literally nothing like the game that existed during Golden Era, during 75 Cap Era. Literally nothing. During the first four expansions, Rise of Xylark, Chains of Promethea, Treasures of At Urgen, and well, Wings of the Gods. That's when things started to change. That's when Scholar and Dancer came out. And it was shortly after that we got the Abyssia. That's when they started making the game vertical. Up until then, the game was horizontal. And then they started making the game heavily vertical, trying to follow this World of Warcraft format, which is what Final Fantasy 14 is. And that's when the user base just everyone dipped out because they changed entirely out the game once. So everything became easy. Everything became more, everything was kind of more solo based, of course, and that's what the game is now. It's very easy, very solo based. You have companions and stuff like that, all that. Whereas back in the Golden Era, it was just heavily difficult. It was time consuming. Everything was tough as balls and required so much communication. You essentially couldn't do anything by yourself. Literally, you couldn't even level. You couldn't level past 12 by yourself, pretty much. I mean, you could, but it would take you 100 times the amount of time that it would take someone in the party to level. So, you needed to, level in parties. You need to be able to communicate. There's the community, but the community was so strong because of it, because everyone was pretty much held accountable, for their own actions and for their stuff like that. Because I mean, back then, just you weren't gonna just make a new character. You know what I'm saying? It'll take you months to get an item. You know what I'm saying? And this is a horizontal game, so you remember, these items last for years. These items are relevant for years, and it takes you time to get these items, and it takes you time to build up and stuff like that. So I mean, you're not about to just go make a new character, a new account, and stuff like that. No, dude, you're not about to do that. So as a result, it creates a community where everyone's pretty much held accountable for this, which created for a great community that was very friendly and very open and very fun. It was real simple. It's like, if you were a poopy person, who was constantly just effing people over and stuff like that, then you literally could not play the game because everything was so team oriented that no one would invite you to do anything. You literally could not play the game, bruv. So it created said, that the community was able to police itself in that regard. And it created for a beautiful, strong community that was just super enjoyable, super enjoyable, super open and whatnot. Those are there's still people to this day that I talk to from my FF11 years to this day. There's bonds, there's lifelong bonds that I have had for so long from Final Fantasy 11. I've been invited to weddings and all sorts of stuff, from people who I just had such strong bonds with through Final Fantasy 11. It's like you go to you go to war for these people, dude. That's how FF11 was. That's the type of bonds that were created in the FF11 Golden Era. You would go to war for these people. It was like you're in the trenches. You're in the trenches, blood, sweat, and tears, you're wondering if you're gonna make it back home alive, bruv. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you're next to your brothers and sisters in this, going through these trials and tribulations, dude. Like, like, like that's what Final Fantasy 11 was, dude. That's literally what Final Fantasy 11 was. Like, those are the type of bonds that that game created. Like, to this day, there's never been an MMO that that has even remotely had a type of community that FF11 had during this golden era. Like, I've tested a lot of MMOs. I play a lot of MMOs, dude, and there's not been one that has come even close to it in regards to the community. Not even close. Of course, like the closest thing would be probably like heyday World of Warcraft players, I guess, right? World of Warcraft came out 2 years after FF11 did, by the way. Of course, the World of Warcraft follows a vertical format, whereas FF11 follows a horizontal format. I never got big into 11, but it was such a unique MMO. It was like unique is such an understatement for that MMO. Like, I wish that people could fully understand and just have seen that game during its heyday. You know, you can't replicate it now. There's private servers and stuff like that, but you know, even the private servers don't have it correct because the game was so expansive, and the private servers always have broken stuff. And then of course you have like the mentalities are different, so it's never the same. The private servers are never one for one with what the game was. It never will be. But like if I just wish that like people could have seen, could have witnessed what life was like back in those days with MMOs and what communities were like. Like, it was, for lack of better words, it was absolutely beautiful. Like, it was just a beautiful experience, just all around, like in every aspect, dude. In every aspect. Like it was like a euphoria almost, right? Like if there was like an afterlife or something like that, like it like looking back on it now, like it would have been that, you know, like if there was like a euphoria or like a heaven or something like that, like it would be like that. Like in like looking back on it now, of course, you know, with how where we're at now. Anyway, just came back to NGS, took a break after DFD2 dropped. Welcome back to the game. Welcome back to the game, Kuzia. I haven't seen your name in here in a while, so welcome back, dude. Welcome back to the game again. We got lots of updates coming next month and whatnot, so probably a good time to come back to the game. It allows you to kind of gear up and get ready for the new iMap feature that will allow us to upgrade our weapons and units. So probably a pretty good time to be coming back to the game. I don't think 11 had any kind of cross-server stuff, so you had to keep a decent rep. Correct. 11 didn't have any cross-server stuff. The only cross-server, you know, stuff that you were dealing with was if you were transferring servers. Thing about transferring servers is that the FF11 community was very close knit in that if you effed up on one server, there was a pretty good chance that people, well, if you were a high level player, anyways. So if you were like in a top link shell, and link shells in 11 are like alliances or guilds, whereas I know in 14 they're like group chats. I think the more accurate term for 14 would be like I think they call it free companies, right? So like that would be like the accurate term for what a link shell was on 11. A link shell is an alliance, a guild on Final Fantasy 11. But you know, if you were a top tier link shell, then of course people know who you are, even on different servers, or at least the leaders of those link shells would. So it still may be difficult to get into a link shell on a different server. Like you have like for real, like y'all have no idea how great the community was because it was policed by itself, because you couldn't just run around anonymously, you know. You couldn't, I'm sorry, I did that incorrectly. You couldn't just create new characters and just, you know, easily get back to in-game and stuff like that. Like, no, dude, like you have to realize that going from level 1 to 75 is taking you months, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like going to level 1 to 75 is taking you a very long time, bro. Like you don't have the luxury of just creating a new account and just getting back into the scope of things. Like unless you're willing to really put in that time. You know what I'm saying? It's not like in Jazz where you can just create a character or be max level, the same day. It's not like that. Like it's you go from level 1 to 75, you're investing weeks and months into doing this. And then you're investing even more time into getting gear that's irrelevant again, which you're not doing, dude. So, you're not about to do this because now you're going to be behind the wait list as well because you're going to have to join a new alliance, a new link shell, and you're going to have to be behind the wait list because you're a new member. So, you're running these content to get these drops, and you're going to have to be behind this wait list of people who have been in there longer, participating longer, and they're up next on the drop list. There might be 4 or 5 people in front of you. You know what I'm saying? So you're not doing that. Plain and simple, you're not. So, so as a result, it created an environment where like it was pretty much like it was like real life. Why I do that? That was unfortunate. It created an environment where it's like, where you help that same accountability as if it was, in person, which obviously creates for a great environment. When you can't hide behind layers and shit, then it creates for a much more generic and genuine environment where you're not able to hide behind layers and just, manipulate and, do this and do that or whatever, right? So it's it was beautiful, dude. It was very beautiful. But like I said, there, like the thing about that game is just that it was difficult though. It was a difficult game. It definitely worked you, but like people would work with you. People would teach you. People would help you out. Because we all start from somewhere, and everyone understands that. So you have to learn things because things were intricate in that game. Like like I used to, I ran some of the top link shells in the game. At first, I ran the Dynamis link shell, or I co-led the Dynamis link shell, and later on, I led a full blown link shell, multiple. But like like for a Dynamis, for instance, like Dynamis is an instance in Final Fantasy 11. Dynamis is an instant zone. It can last for 3 hours. The initial time is 1 hour, and then you have to get time extensions to increase it to 3 hours, which you want to do. The initial time is 1 hour. So pretty much that tells you right there, you already need to be efficient in what you're doing because you can easily miss that checkpoint or miss those time extensions. Then you just wasted a whole bunch of money in that run because you just missed out on 2 other hours that you had in there. So, but for instance, like Dynamis, like we would have to get down, me and the other officers or whatever you call them. Like they're called sack holders. They're like the other sack holders or whatever, the people who are running the Dynamis run. We have to get down, and every week is this is usually, I think the cooldown was like 72 hours. But I think maybe you were running it maybe once a week or something like that, depending on what you're doing. Usually events were like once, like 2 or 3 times a week or something like that, because they were pretty big events. You have a whole bunch of people there. And there are lots of different things to do. Lots of different things to do in that game. But pretty much like, like you would be sitting down. I would have to sit down and I would be going over maps and stuff, dude. Like we would have maps of the zones. We have maps of the zones. We have a list of all of our members, all the classes that they have leveled to 75, what their skill levels are in terms of like, the element skills, like skill points, like your black magic is so and so level, your white magic is so and so, like that type of like point skill level. You know what I'm saying? It's not what we know who can do what and who can do what efficiently. We have to go through this, you know what I'm saying? And we have to figure out the best routes to the best plans for what we have and kind of split who into what groups. A lot of times you're going to go into different groups. So one group goes and gets this, one group goes and gets this, you converge back in the middle or something like that. Like you have to go through this. You have to go through these maps, and you're looking at key points and whatnot, and you have to take your resources, your members and whatnot, and you have to delegate. You have to delegate what each member is going to do, what each who's in charge of this, who's in charge of that, so and so and so. You know, so like that was Dynamis too. Like I would sit down and we would go over that stuff. We would go over that stuff, going over maps, going over strategies and whatnot. Like, like the game was a heavily community based. Heavily community based, and you know, people definitely depended on you. That's the thing about that game is that people depended on you for a role that you were assigned or whatever. Because you take a Dynamis run, which I believe at the time 70, 6, 12, 18, 24, 36, 12, 18, 20, it was either 40, maybe it's 42. It was either 40 or 70, something around. It was either one of those two. Could be in a Dynamis instance at one time. So it's a lot of people. It's a lot of people, and everyone has a role. And you want parties grouped up in certain ways. So of course you have to account for healers, bards, stuff like that. Which parties are going to get the bards. If you have limited bards, which parties are going to get the bards. You want to put the bards with the black mages. You want to put the bards with the melee teams. So and so and so. All that type of stuff. So you have to know your appropriate classes that you have that you can utilize. And like say like there's an instance where a whole bunch of mobs pop. You have to trust this one red mage. Or maybe you have one or two red mages, or one or two black mages, right? And their specific role when we pop these mobs, we're gonna hit this statue, and this statue's gonna pop like 30 mobs, whole bunch of 30 mobs, really hard to see everything. And then we're gonna have a thief. We're gonna have a thief shoot it, so that way the thief has aggro. The thief's gonna use like flee, so it increases their speed, allows them to like run super quick, right? And they're gonna do like a circle, gonna do like a circle around this little area, right? So they can kind of round the mobs up, right? During this time, when these mobs pass, we're gonna be like here, and then the mobs are gonna be here. The thief is gonna be going like around in front of us. When this wave of mobs come, these two red mages or these two black mages have one assignment, and that is find this one little boss in there that has a different name than everyone. It looks slightly different. You have to find this guy during that segment of those mobs moving, those 30 mobs moving past us, and you need to get that guy. You either need to pull him or sleep him or whatever. You need to get that guy's attention. If you miss that one instance, the whole alliance wipes, or we're all effed, and then we just wasted that whole run. Like there was that much pressure, so it was like it was intense. It was intense. So it was like when you effed up, we all effed up, and it was just like we all felt it. You know what I'm saying? So it was like there was a lot of attention and care put into training members and into building relationship with members and stuff like that, because it was important to do so. So that was FF11, dude. And like I said, because of that, it created a very, very, very strong community. Very strong community. And of course, back then, it was both JP and it was one server. So back then, you would say it's JP hours, because JP hours were obviously nighttime, which is daytime there, and that's what there would be pretty much all JP players on. There was one. It was one servers. Well, the different servers, but one regional aspect, I guess, right? Because like there's different servers like Bahamut and Ragnarok and Sylph and different servers, but there was no regions differences on the servers. So you would have a mix of, but they had an auto translate function within the game, so you could still communicate and stuff like that. So they had like an auto translate and like a little like a preset text like gimmick that you could use. That was actually very efficient. So you could easily communicate with players who were Japanese, but of course, JP players were obviously, and they tend to be more serious, tend to be pretty elite. So it's like once you like if you're getting good with like the JP players, you're like you know you're doing something right pretty much, because JP players very much will only invite people who have proven that they can get things done. So back in those days, I played a lot in JP hours. I was in Ninja main primarily, but I played some other classes too. But yeah, dude, like if there's nothing more, there's nothing greater. Like in my time on this earth, dude, there'd be nothing greater than to see a FF11 remake by the time I die, which is probably never going to happen. You know what I'm saying? But like an actual FF11 remake, like an official FF11 remake, so it means that everything works and stuff like that, would make me one of the happiest people on this entire effing planet, bro. And I know I speak for a lot of people when I say that, because FF11 impacted a lot of people. So same way that World of Warcraft did, it impacted a lot of people's lives. So the annoying thing about that is that they lost the code for FF11. They literally lost the code. Square Enix lost the code for FF11. That's one of the big reasons why we haven't gotten the FF11 remake, because the game was intricate as SF, but they lost the code because of how stuff was stored back then, how their practices of the company, how stuff was stored back then. They ended up losing the source code to FF11. Unbelievable, I know, but it's actually true. They lost the source code. So Square Enix, bro. So that's one of the reasons why we haven't seen an FF11 remake. But yeah, you remember hearing they lost it? Yeah, dude. Like I'm like, bro, come on, y'all. Of course, they've changed their practices since then, obviously. But holy smokes, man. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult for them to make an FF11 remake, is because they lost the freaking source code, which is baffling. I'm sure FF11 remake would work in just the modern game say. Yeah, I've talked about that as well too. Because realistically speaking, FF11 would be difficult to probably work. If it was the exact same type of game, I'm not sure how well it would work in this current gaming landscape either. But that being said, I mean, maybe it will work just fine, because kind of, history always repeats itself, right? History always repeats itself, and it kind of seems like we're kind of going back into, we're wanting that more generic, that more genuine gaming feel. Like you kind of see games like Black Myth Wukong being super successful and stuff like that here recently, right? And these games that are kind of more time consuming are starting to become a bit more stronger and more apparent in the present, right? So I mean, it's, who knows, because that niche is not being itched, and eventually, like I said, history repeats itself, and people will want that niche, to be itched, right? So, but I do understand what you're saying though, where, because it is a time consuming game, naturally, but quite frankly, all MMOs in general are more or less time consuming. Spike content.